Paul was able to engage and interact with the leading thinkers of his day. And so he's debating. The word debate there means to go back and forth. It's not a contentious thing. It's just a question and answer kind of thing. And Paul is able to do that. He's not intimidated by them whatsoever. And here's why. Paul believes that the gospel has what it takes to take on the most dominant ideas of any culture. That's what Paul believed. Do you believe that? Paul believed that the gospel of Jesus Christ could take on any worldview and could take on the dominant ideas in any culture. That's what we have to believe. If we're going to have courage and boldness, then we've got to believe that too. We've got to be like Paul and say, wait a minute, this is my story. This is my song. The Lord Jesus Christ came, lived a sinless life, died, buried, was raised from the dead. He's Lord of all, and he commands us to share the good news. We have to believe that our worldview has what it takes to take on the ideas of any culture, even ours. We have to know that because there's power in the gospel. And to be able to do that skillfully, this leads us to the next step. We have to be able to do our homework. Do your homework. Have you done that? Do you know what you believe and why you believe it? And do you know your audience and what they believe and why they believe it? Or can you interact with someone who's different than you in a skillful way? Paul certainly did. Paul knows their worldview so well, you'll see later in the passage, he quotes their own philosophers back to them. And they go, wow, Paul knows our story. He's quoting our songs. He's quoting our musicians. He's quoting Bono from U2 back to us. He knows exactly what we're doing. He knows what we're all about. You got to show that you care enough about those that you're trying to talk to, that you've understood and that you've learned what they think too. And then they'll begin to listen to you. But some of us don't want to do this. You know why? Because it takes work. And we tend to resist things that take work. But this is what God calls us to do. So if you really care, won't you take the time to learn their language, their culture, their worldview? Listen, if you really love somebody, won't you figure out how to communicate something important to them? For example, I don't know sign language because it's hard to learn. And because no one close to me in my family is deaf. But I guarantee you, if one of my kids was deaf, then I would take the time to learn sign language because I would do anything I needed to do to be able to communicate with someone that I cared about. See, just like that, if we care about those that we are trying to reach, then we will take the time to do our homework and understand how to communicate with them. Absolutely, we will do that. So we need to do our homework. Pastor Bob recommended a book last week that I just want to throw out there again for you to check out as a resource. It was called Faithfully Different by Natasha Crane, and he shared the 4 tenets of a secular worldview. Do you remember when he shared this last week? I thought it was so good, it was worth repeating. It's just so clear and so concise. I just really love the way she puts this in her book. Feelings being the ultimate guide. Number 2, happiness is the ultimate goal. This is where we live. Judging is the ultimate sin, and God is the ultimate guess. Do you understand that about the secular worldview in which we're engaging with today? Do you understand that this is where we're coming from? If so, then you have to be able to not only articulate this, but you have to be able to skillfully articulate the contrasting view from a Christian perspective. First, would we say feelings are the ultimate guide? No, we would say actually the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Feelings can actually lead you astray. We actually think God and His Word are the ultimate guide. Second, would we say happiness is the ultimate goal? Not necessarily. People get happy doing some pretty atrocious things. We would say that glorifying God, knowing God, and making Him known is the ultimate goal. Third, judging is the ultimate sin. Well, if we think about it, I think there's some behaviors that we might say are worth judging. And we wouldn't say that judging is the ultimate sin. There's a wrong kind of judging. We understand that. But we would say actually rejecting Jesus is the ultimate sin. Fourth, God is the ultimate guess? No. God is the infinite creator and redeemer. He's revealed Himself to us in His creation and in His word and in His Son, and He's perfect in holiness and love and justice, and He's a firm foundation on which we stand, to which extensive and sufficient evidence points. Amen. So we have to be able to skillfully interact with people who have a different worldview, and when you do this, do so gently and respectfully. This is the warning in 1 Peter 3. Remember what Peter says? Always be prepared to make a defense, that's an apologetic, to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do this with gentleness and respect. Now notice it says that we're given a warning. And the reason is because when we present the Christian worldview, it's threatening to the foundation of their entire worldview. God has given you a powerful weapon in the gospel and in the Christian worldview, and we have to defend our faith with gentleness. This is why it comes with a warning. When you go to the store and buy a Nerf gun, there's not that many warnings on it, because Nerf guns are not that dangerous. I know there's some exceptions to that, but you get the point. But if you go buy a real gun, there's tons of warnings on that thing. You got to get a license, you got to get all kinds of permissions. There's a lot of warnings about the danger of that. When you defend your faith properly, when you critique an unbeliever's worldview, they're flying in an airplane, and you're aiming a gun at their airplane, and you're blowing holes in their entire worldview, and that plane is going down. And if you don't do this with gentleness and respect, they will not cruise over to the runway of Christianity. They will ditch in Lake Hindu, or they will go over here and ditch in Lake Buddhism instead. And so when you share your faith, I always say, don't be a jerk about it. You got to do this with gentleness and respect, so that people, when they talk to you, they want to know more about the Lord Jesus after talking to you, not less about the Lord Jesus after talking to you. Take special note of this command when you engage on social media. The greatest evangelist I've ever met, Larry Moyer, said, Dave, cultivate the gift of wholesome conversation so that when you engage people about Christ, they want to know more about the Lord after they talk to you, not less. That's a good word.